All right. Hello, everybody. This is Jennifer, and Lauren is on here as well, and we will both be kicking off the presentation today. So we have three topics that we wanted to talk about, and the first one is employee injuries. The second one is guest injuries or incidents to the store, and the third one is onboarding. So we've talked about several of these topics before, but we still continue to have issues with some of the correct injury report forms getting submitted and submitted in a timely manner, especially on the night shift when something happens at the store. And then with as we switch over to the new onboarding process, we've had lots of payroll delays and check delays because people are not getting onboarded properly or not getting finalized since we switched this new onboarding system. So we'll do a full overview of how to properly onboard someone. But after leaving this call, it's really important that everybody, follows these procedures exactly how they're laid out and exactly as we discussed today, so that we can stop having to follow up on these and focus on driving our sales and other metrics that we want to be focusing on even more. So with that, we will get kicked off with employee injuries.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. It's Lauren. I'm going to begin to share my screen now, and I'm going to take you through the employee injury or the guest and property incident forms and protocol. So first, I want to make sure everyone's aware of where to find these forms before we actually talk about the specific form and the instructions. So this is the CDN website. So both CDN and PCDM will be able to find it on this website. SCN, I will add it to yours as well, and it should be available on Google Drive under the payroll forms folder. So you have multiple ways to access the forms. And I typically also send out the protocol with the forms attached to an email. So it's something really easy that you can save to your desktop, and you can print a copy of it really quickly. Same as if you're off and your leader's there, they can retrieve that form really easily if it's saved to your desktop. So I definitely recommend that. But if you're on the home screen, you're going to click on the downloads on the left-hand side. And it's going to be your first major folder here called Accident and Injury Reports. And the notes section on the website will direct you to using the correct form. We do get a lot of the incorrect forms submitted, so make sure that you're choosing the right one to complete. The Accident and Incident Report is going to be used when the incident involves a guest. And then the injury report and refusal of treatment is to be used with an employee. So we're going to go ahead and look at the supervisor's injury report. Okay. So the supervisor's injury report is to be completed anytime there's an injury sustained within your store regarding an employee. It does not matter how minor or how severe the injury is. It's important that we document the injury, just in case the employee needs to seek treatment after the fact. So initially they may think, I'm okay, I don't need anything, but say that little cut on their finger gets infected and they need to seek treatment later on, we need this injury report on file. Okay, so it's important that they make you aware of the injury and you complete the form. There's no harm in completing the form and submitting it, but we do need to put it on file just in case they do need treatment going, in the future. Okay. So even if it's a weekend, we still need these forms to be sent in within 24 hours following the injury. Okay, so it's an immediate form. It's not when I get to it in a few days, I'll fill it out on Monday. You need to immediately complete it and send it into the payroll email. You also need to make your area supervisor aware of what happened in the injury. We may need to get video footage or make sure the employee's okay by doing a wellness check. Okay, we'd also ask that you take a picture of the injury sustained to go along with the injury report. That's helpful. Okay, so looking at the injury report, there's multiple sections that you're going to have to fill out. So the supervisor can be a manager, or in the event that you're not there, it can be your shift leader. So you're going to fill out your company name. So of course, that's not going to be Dunkin' Donuts. That would be Bel Air Donuts, for example. And then the store phone, address, and zip code. Okay, so that's really straightforward. That's basically your store information. The next section is your employee information. So we need a full name, not just a first name, okay? We need a full name, their phone number, date of birth, current address, and zip code. We also can retrieve that from Integrity, but sometimes the address isn't always accurate or up to date. So please try to get that from your employee to complete. Next, the accident information. This is where we typically lack in the information we're providing. So the employee should report the accident to you immediately. So technically this accident date and the date it was reported to the employer should be identical. Sometimes that'll vary depending if it's a baker overnight or something like that, but the date the accident actually occurred and then when you were made aware of it, okay? We need the approximate time of the accident, the county of the accident name, location, and address. So this is slightly redundant from the first section, but please go ahead and still fill that in. What was the employee doing at the time of the accident? So that could be they were, cleaning the bagel saver, they were dusting the menu board, they were mopping the lobby, okay? So what activity were they involved in when the accident happened? Next is the employee's description of the accident. So that doesn't mean that the employee has to write their own sentence there. That means you can write it down for them based on what they told you happened, okay? So basically in the employee's words, how did that injury occur? So brief description there. Injury or illness that occurred, okay? So don't just say something really vague, okay, like bruise or cut. We want to make sure we're as specific as possible, especially with the part of the body affected. And the reason why this is important is when the payroll company sends us over to a hospital or a clinic for the employee to seek treatment, if you put that they cut their hand, we need to know it's their left hand on their palm or their middle finger near their knuckle on, the top of their hand or something like that. So we need to try to be as specific as possible with what the injury was and what part of the body is it affecting, okay? Because the cut on the hand, you have a lot of different places, obviously, that you could be cut. So we want to get them treatment for that specific area. Was there any equipment that contributed to the injury? Yes or no? So in the event that they, cut themselves with the bagel saver, then you could say yes. And then you can describe it in detail. If it's a slip and fall, obviously there's not really any equipment that's contributing to that, so that would be a no. And if there are any witnesses, so did someone see them fall? Did someone see them cut themselves? If so, just put yes in their name, please. So the bottom part is going to be important when deciding whether or not we need to fill out a second form. So if the employee thinks that at the current time they don't want treatment, we're going to fill out a separate form stating they don't want treatment, okay? If they do want to seek treatment, we need to provide on the form where we're sending them to, okay? So your ASLs have access to a list of urgent care clinics that are closest to everyone's particular store, okay? And we're gonna reshare that after the call today. So you can reach out to your area supervisor and they would be able to direct you on where to send that employee who's injured. In the event that the urgent care clinic is closed and immediate treatment is needed, we can send them to the emergency room, okay? But that should be if they need the immediate care and only if the urgent care clinic is closed at that point in time. The only time we want to call for an ambulance is if we have a life-threatening injury, okay? We had someone who cut their finger and we called an ambulance for a liquid bandage. So we really want to know when to use an ambulance, when to use the emergency room, and when to use an urgent care clinic. So if you're unsure about any particular situation you encounter, please make sure that you're reaching out to get the answer so we can help guide you, okay? So you would want to list the treatment location within this treatment section, whether you signed off kind of authorizing it or not, and if you agree with what happened, what the employee is telling you that happened, okay? So if that's the case, this is the only form that is going to be required if they're seeking treatment. If they're refusing treatment, we would circle under the bottom section, did they refuse treatment, yes or no? We're going to select yes, and then the supervisor, meaning you guys, managers or shift leaders, is going to put their signature, print their name, and date it. Okay, so that would be a completed form in both instances, whether they wanted to seek treatment or not seek treatment. So now,
hey, Lauren, there was a question.
Yeah. Okay.
Do they need to put their social security number on that form?
So it is not necessary on any of the payroll forms that you need to list the social security number. So if Integrity does need that information, they have that on file and they could fill it in. So it's best for you to leave it off. It's not needed, okay? If you write it on, it's not a big deal, but generally on the payroll forms, we don't ask that a social security number is required. Okay. And if anyone else has questions, yeah, please put it in the chat function so one of us can see it and answer it for you. Okay, so if the employee did refuse treatment, we are going to click on the refusal of treatment form, also located in the same spot. Again, employee name, first and last with date of birth, and then your store name, for example, Bel Air Donuts. And this is just primarily for the employee to let us know that they did sustain an injury and they are indeed refusing treatment. So they would fill in, my injury occurred on, I do not want to seek medical treatment, and I want to not take a drug test, or I do not want to seek medical treatment, but I will volunteer to take a drug test. Okay, so generally for any accident that they seek treatment for, a drug test is required immediately. So even if we send them to the emergency room, we're still going to have to send them to the clinic for a drug test and for a follow-up visit by an approved doctor, okay? But they can elect to not get the drug test or to get it. If they say yes, then we're going to send them to a clinic to get it. So they will indeed have to go there. Then they're going to sign off on it, and you're going to sign off on that form as well. Okay, so both this form, if they refuse treatment, and the supervisor's injury report are both required to be sent to the payroll email address within 24 hours. Okay, and we do check that email on the weekend, so we will send it over to Integrity. But you should notify your ASL right away, and then this paperwork along with any pictures or other statements or anything that would be helpful, to know about the injury. If you sent that over within 24 hours, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so does anyone have questions on the employee-related injury? Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the incident report. This is for guest injuries or property damage. So again, it's in the same folder. It's called an incident report. Okay, this form is a little bit more informal, I guess you would say. This is kind of for our record keeping. So again, we want a description of the accident, what happened, date, time, location. Okay, so the more details you have, the better. And even if you write on a separate page or use the back of a page in either instance, that's acceptable, okay, if you need to include more information than the space allows. So for the guest, we want to include a description of the injury or incident, what happened, how did it happen, and were there any witnesses? If so, give their contact details, name, phone, and address. So this could be a guest hit a sign in our parking lot. It could be they tripped and fell in our lobby. It could be one of our patio umbrellas flew and hit their car, okay? So all of these are acceptable instances to complete this form. It's not just injury sustained, but also property damage, okay? We want to make sure they're okay, first and foremost, if a guest is hurt. And we want to make sure we're getting all the contact information from the guest involved. There was one instance where a guest hurt themselves by falling in the store. We called an ambulance and sent them to a hospital. Didn't know their name, didn't know what hospital they were going to, and therefore, of course, had no way of contacting them. So it's important, first and foremost, we make sure they're okay, and then we take the next step, okay? So the next section was anyone injured. So this is what I was talking about: name, age, male, female, address, phone number. Sometimes the guest will be hesitant to file this report with you, but you can pose it as, we would like to contact you to see how you're doing tomorrow or in a few days. We want to make sure you're still okay. So we want to do a wellness check as well as make sure we capture this information in case we need it in the future or they contact us and do need treatment, okay? So the treatment details, sometimes you're just giving them ice or you're giving them a Band-Aid. Sometimes they're maybe going to see their own doctor, or in the event that it's severe, you're probably going to be calling an ambulance. So just list those treatment details here. And if there's any action required on your part to prevent this injury from happening again, so for example, if we didn't have wet floor signs out, if we needed to repaint the curb yellow that they tripped on, is there anything within our control that we should be doing to make sure it doesn't happen to another guest, okay? So we need to take action on that to make sure it doesn't happen again. And of course, again, list your name, title, phone number, address, and date, okay? If there's property damage involved, you would want to get their driver's license information and also file a police report. In both instances of property or guest injury, we want to make sure we have pictures of the damage, okay? So if it's the umbrella, take a picture of their car, where the umbrella was on the patio. If they fall and hurt their knees, take a picture of their knee. And then if needed, we can record video footage as well. Okay, again, you want to inform your area supervisor of this, and you want to send the form within 24 hours to the payroll email address. Okay, so are there any questions with either employee injuries or guest incidents? And I also want to stress that no matter how severe or minor, it must be reported regardless, okay? We want to make sure we get everyone care that needs it. Okay, so if no one has questions on any of the injuries, we're going to proceed to talk about our onboarding process. So as everyone is fully aware, we transitioned from our old payroll software that Integrity uses to the new software called Prism, and we've had some hiccups since because of the new process. Maybe some people are a little unsure of what to do in certain circumstances. Things have changed, right? So it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. But the purpose of us going over this is because we're having difficulty paying the employees who are working for us. So everyone understands that it's hard enough to find, hire, train, and have good people working at your store. So what we don't want to do is invest that time finding them and bringing them on to only not pay them and they quit, right? So it's very important as part of their onboarding process that we make sure we do everything necessary, whether it's setting up Radiant, setting them up in Integrity, giving them a uniform, giving them proper training, etc. Okay, so we're going to go over the Integrity portion because we feel like the training Integrity provided from the get-go was lacking a little bit, and we've also learned a lot since then. Okay, my slide will move. Okay, so employees must be fully onboarded in 2 places before they start working, okay? So no one should start working for us until they've been put in Radiant. And they must be also onboarded into Integrity so they can get paid for the hours they worked. In addition to, they're going to be covered if they sustain any injuries, okay? So we want to make sure that they're entered in Integrity. So they cannot work before being onboarded. And of course, it's the best practice that when you invite them in to do their onboarding, you ask them to bring their proper ID for their I-9 documents, and you're also asking them to bring their direct deposit information if they have it. So we can do the process from start to finish and not partially do it and then have to complete the process on another day. Let's just get it done all in one time by making sure the employee's prepared when they come in. Okay, so I've broken this process down into 3 steps. The first step is the manager is going to initiate the onboarding process, okay, which is fairly brief. We're going to go step by step. Number 2, the employee completes their portion of the onboarding using their own login. And number 3, the manager approves the I-9 and completes the onboarding, okay? So these are the 3 steps that have to be utilized. And if they're not, this is where we have a breakdown where the employee doesn't end up getting paid and other, things happen that we don't want to. Okay. I'd also like to clarify here that when a manager is involved in this process, you also need to make sure that you're using your manager level login and don't accidentally sign in as your personal integrity login. Okay. That's where some of the issues are stemming from, that you're not seeing employees there for approval. Okay, so part 1, the manager initiates integrity onboarding. First, you're going to log into the integrity website. Okay, click on manager login. At the top banner, you're going to click on my employees. And when that drop-down box comes down, you're going to select new hire, and that's under the HR section. Okay, this is the first screen that you're going to start typing employee data into. So all of the red cells are required. So you can just complete the cells in red. You don't need to fill in any of the other information. The employee is going to fill in some of that information later on. Okay, so just fill in the data in red. Okay. So here again, it's outlining what exactly, this is the second half of the page that you're not seeing of what's beneath there. But again, just a few more red cells. Okay. So the red cells that were just shown on the screen, the work location, you're going to select the only available option, which is the code for your store. The employer ID and the hire type will automatically default. You will be typing in the social security number, the first name, last name, and the personal email address of the employee. Do not put in the work store email address, okay? There's a secondary way to log in that Jennifer is going to walk you through, but we do not need the store address to be used, okay? It needs to be the employee's personal email address, whether or not they can log into it right now or not, okay? You're going to fill in the company and employer start date. The position is crew member. The status would be A for active. And there's one thing in particular that's kind of a big change for us. So under the employment type, we want to select part-time, no benefits, okay? Unless we're hiring for a specialty position, such as a shift leader, a manager, if you have a main baker, or some other sort of specific job function. Everyone else should be hired in as part-time, and they will achieve full-time status based on their performance, okay? Everyone else should be coded as part-time, no benefits, okay? Our benefit type should, benefit group should be primary. And then under the pay details, the pay group, they're getting paid weekly, so select W for weekly. The pay method will be hourly for all employees. The only exception is managers, and of course of which the ASL will be onboarding. The pay rate, so you're entering their starting rate of pay. Their pay rate basis, that is going to default, and it should be hourly. And then finally, the standard hours, you do not want to edit. This is a default section. It's going to default for everyone to 40 hours, okay? So when you don't follow the specific points in this pay detail section, we end up having someone getting paid, for example, $17 for the entire week, or they get paid 32 cents an hour. So if you change some of these sections, it's going to impact what the employee is getting paid, okay? So it's very important that you enter their starting rate of pay and then leave those two things as default. Okay. Rehires. So the process for rehires is anyone that's worked for us before, you must send an email to the office for approval. That should include the full name, approximate time frame they worked for us, and a store, if you knew what store they worked at, so we could quickly locate their information. And then at that point, we will say yes or no based on their terms of separation and write-ups, etc. If an employee has previously worked for us, you will have to notify integrity and they will transfer the person into your store. We will need to rehire them and submit new I-9 paperwork to the payroll email address. So that would be a printout, be completed with a pen, of course. It's not going to be completed online, so it'd be a printout they would have to complete and send into the payroll email address. Okay? No paperwork should be submitted to integrity directly. It should always come through the payroll email address. Okay? If there's a special circumstance and another client of our payroll company, but not for us, you will see the message work for another client. So their onboarding documents will have to be completed in the physical form. So again, we would print out all of those documents and you will send it to the payroll email address. We will turn that into integrity and they will need to complete the process from their end. Okay? All right, so this is the final screen for the manager part 1 portion. Okay? So you're going to click done on this screen. You will see a message that says update progress, employee was hired, they were onboarded. That does not mean it's completed. There are still 2 very large sections that need to be completed. This is just the initial step in getting them into the system, but there's still information that needs to be done before they're fully onboarded, okay? So you can ignore that message because there's still things that need to be done by both the employee and by you. Okay, now Jennifer's going to walk you through the employee portion of the onboarding.
All right, so yes, part 2. So it will be the employee section. You know, in a rare situation where the employee is having trouble or you have them fill out the paperwork, then you might need to fill out this portion, but ideally the employee is actually filling out, but we want to review it with all of you so you're comfortable helping them if they do have any questions with this process. So after hitting save and done, like Lauren was just saying on the next portion, it's going to send an email to the employee's personal email, and that will prompt them to begin their portion of the onboarding process. Lauren already mentioned, but we do not want to use the store email address, where there's a second option on how they can log in. So we need to use a personal email address for them. And then one note, if we begin the hiring process for an employee and they don't complete their portion within 3 days, they'll be automatically deleted from the system. So, you know, it's the best practice to try to get them onboarded and get them, you know, into our stores as quickly as we can to start their training. But if it is more than 3 days, they will be deleted and you have to restart that process. So the 2 options for the employees to start their portion would be option 1, they get an email on their personal email, and we just click that link, and that will go to the screen for them to enter their information. If they do not get an email or they aren't able to log into the personal email, there is a second option. So they can just go to the Integrity site, and instead of manager login, they're going to click employee login. And they won't have a username or password, so they're going to click register. And then it's going to ask them to fill in their information, their last name, their social security number, their personal email, username, password, and confirm their password. They should write down their username and password so that they're able to log in right after that. And then they'll click on register down at the bottom.
And I just wanted to add in that the personal email address that was filled out on that initial screen by the manager needs to be used in this registration form. So they need to use that same email address.
And so there might be a delay once they register before they're able to actually log in. So, I've been finding it's about 5 minutes after that, and they should be able to log in. So they'll go to that screen, they'll do login with their username and password. And this is where they're going to get started. So this will be their open screen. They'll hit get started. And it's just going to give an overview of what the employee can expect, of how the process is going to work. And then these are going to be the sections. It's going to be the different sections on the left-hand side. They need to complete all of these forms. So the first one is going to be personal information. They're going to, again, have to fill in the red fields of required information. So date of birth, gender. There's going to be several different red questions that they should be able to fill out on their own when completing this process. And then they'll hit next down at the bottom. And then the next two screens are also personal information, so emergency contact, and then voluntary and self-identification information. So they'll fill those out and then hit next again. There we go. And then it's going to show a little green check mark up in the top left that the employee information section is completed. So then the next section is new hire forms. And the employee now reads the handbook. So they're going to click on the link and read through the handbook. Of course, when they start, we should still reinforce some of the key points from the handbook, the yellow highlighted sections of key policies, but they should be reading the full handbook right here. And then they'll click next. And then they're going to have to agree. So they're going to say, I read and understood all of these policies in the handbook, and I agree to following them. Then the employees are going to answer a questionnaire. And note for these questions, even if they answer no, they will have to put an NA in the empty cells, otherwise it will not complete properly. So answer yes or no for all of these questions and fill in the blanks. And then they have to acknowledge the injury policy. So they're going to hit I agree that they are aware of the injury policy. Next is just like on the paper forms, the employee-employer agreement consent. So they're going to read through the consent there and then select agree. And then the new hire forms are complete. And again, it'll show a green check mark as you go through each section. So the next part is direct deposit. Remember, we should only give our employees two choices. So that should be direct deposit or pay card. So we do not want to do paper checks anymore. So we're going paperless. Direct deposit and pay card are the only options. If they want direct deposit, we'll select the bank account option and type in the banking account information. If they want a pay card, when you select pay card, it will automatically it'll be assigned by the system and no other information will have to be submitted.
And then we'll select next. I'd also like to add, Jennifer, that Jennifer stated, there's only going to be two choices when onboarding. There is no choice for a paper check. So if you bring someone on to onboard and they don't have their direct deposit information, we need to automatically select them to get a pay card. That doesn't mean that in the future they can't bring in the paper forms and get direct deposit set up, but there will not be any paper checks. So if they don't have their banking information at that time, they're going to get a pay card for their first check at minimum. Just either one or the other. So we just need to get into a habit of reminding our employees, hey, make sure you bring your banking info or else you will by default get a pay card.
Thank you, Lauren. Okay, so after they put that information in, they will select next. And again, it will show a green check mark that the direct deposit section is completed. And next up is tax forms. So first they'll fill out the W-4. So they'll hit the little next button there. and it'll ask a couple of questions on how many allowances they want to give, and then it's going to give a preview of the form. So we need to, read through the form, double check that all the information is correct for those allowances, and then complete next. And I see a question that we have, when they do have a bank account after getting a card, we will have to fill out a direct deposit payroll form and submit that to payroll. We will not be able to go back into the system and submit it. Is that correct, Lauren?
Yes, that's correct. We don't want any changes to be made directly on the Integrity website after the employee has been onboarded. So if we need to change a pay rate, if we need to change their address, if we need to change their direct deposit information, all of that needs to be done by completing a form and then submitting it to the payroll email address.
Good question. Thanks for clarifying. Okay, so once the tax forms are completed, so obviously we do have some stores in Alabama and Louisiana. Those stores will have to do the state form as well as the other one. And then the next step is employee I-9 form. So they're going to fill out their portion of the I-9, which is just their general information. So name, address, social security number, date of birth, those kind of things, citizen or non-citizen. And then they're almost finished. So once you've made all the selections, we're going to hit submit my selections. We do want to make sure it does show completed on the status of all of them. So, yep, for the I-9 form, submit my elections. And this is where we want to make sure all sections say submitted. If it does not say submitted, it'll say in progress, and you can click on that link and take you back to whatever section it was to fill out, and it'll be highlighted in red, whatever is missing. And so that will tell the employee, congratulations, you've completed the onboarding process. So the employee portion is completed. So they ideally would let you know, or if you're helping them fill it out, then you can go in and finish your portion. But just as key note, just because the employee portion is finished does not mean they can start working yet. We still have to finalize the step 3 of the onboarding process.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So the third and final step to the onboarding process in Integrity is for the manager to approve the onboarding. Okay, so we're nearly complete with their process. Just a few things that we need to do. Okay, so the manager needs to log in to their Integrity account. Again, this must be the store level login. It cannot be the manager's personal login. And at the top of the page, you're going to select My Employees. And when the drop-down box appears, you're going to select Onboarding. Okay, you should see a window that opens that looks very similar to this. And directly under the home, you're going to see an option for programs to run. So go ahead and click that. And then you're going to select the employee who is in the need of your I-9 approval. Okay, so right now you see Jane Doe listed there. You would click Run I-9 section for Jane Doe. A box will appear. You're just going to hit Run to your far right-hand side. And then you're going to complete their I-9. Okay, so the manager is going to enter their own name and title. So that first section that says Susie Smith, that is for the person who is completing this portion of the I-9. It shouldn't be the employee's name, okay? Because someone besides the employee needs to be verifying that these documents are in order, aren't expired, etc. Okay? So you'll also need to input the date of hire and what documents are going to be used to complete the I-9. So there are a few choices that we're going to look at on the next screen. Okay, so I'm sure you've all seen this before. This is the list of acceptable I-9 documents. So either they can do one document from list A, or they can choose one from list B and one from list C. okay? So depending on what they brought with them, you would have to do a combination of B and C or one directly from list A, okay? So depending on which one you make, I only did one example. You would fill out the information from that document that they presented. Keep in mind that the manager must physically see the I-9 document, so they can't just write it on a piece of paper and bring it into you. You actually have to have the document in front of you to verify this, okay? The document can't be expired, to make sure that you're reviewing the expiration, if it has one, to make sure that it is credible. And then we want to make sure that this is done, because if you were the person verifying the I-9 documents and it comes back as unverifiable, then you could be held responsible. And I'm sure no one wants to get in trouble. We want to make sure that everything that we're completing throughout this whole process is legitimate, okay? So it's important that we have the documents in front of us. They can't onboard and they can't start working until we've had these documents to complete the I-9 process, okay? So unless this is done, they cannot start. So if they forgot their paperwork, they need to come back another time or another day to finish. Okay, again, we're almost there. So you've completed everything required. So you would hit select, submit my election to go to the next screen. And you can see from the bottom there, it says section 2 documentation, and the list from documents from list A or documents from list B and C are complete. So we're going to hit select, submit my election, and the onboarding is now complete, okay? So the employee portion is the biggest portion, but if you're helping them through it, it should move rather quickly, but make sure that you're starting the process and you're ending the process, okay? Just a few other important things to know. If you begin the hiring process for an employee and they don't complete their portion within 3 days, they will automatically be deleted from the system. Also, if you do not complete your entire portion, so that includes the I-9 documentation at the end, within 10 days, the employee will also be deleted from the system in that instance, okay? So this is where we're hearing a lot of, but I entered that employee and they don't show under my login as needing approval. Well, that's probably because we've exceeded this 3-day timeline or 10-day timeline, and they've been deleted from the system. So that's causing, a few of our issues when it comes to getting their payroll process. So again, this needs to be a timely process. Let's bring the employee in, let's get it done, and let's get them to work, okay? So the 3-step process should be pretty straightforward and easy, and feel free to reference this document anytime, where we are going to share it with you after the call. Okay, last thing, so if you have someone who's a no-call, no-show and they've been fully onboarded, you can contact Integrity to delete them from the system. Previously, with the old software, you were able to delete them. That's no longer an option, so you would just notify Integrity and they would remove them from the system, okay? If they didn't show up and they never worked for us, they're able to delete them for us, okay? So that concludes the slideshow. Does anyone have questions? Let's see if we have any that came through on the chat feature.
Lauren, where did you say SCN can find the form?
So SCN, it will be, since your website is so new, we'll go ahead and add it to the website, but it's also been shared on Google Drive, so I can just reshare the documents with everyone. So the payroll forms are going to include the blank form as well as an example of how to fill it out, and that would also include the accident report. So it's very informational, as well as, just the location to go to get the blank forms to complete.
And then another question, if they give the wrong email or misspell it during the onboarding process, would we have to delete them and restart?
Yeah, I would say we probably, I start that and then have Integrity delete the old one out. Generally, when we're, during the onboarding process, if there's something that's in error, Integrity can't fix it until the onboarding has been completed. So they can go back in after the fact and repair it. But when we're when we're first onboarding them, they can't do anything while that onboarding is active. So I would say if that's the case and you notice it right away, we can kind of start over with that employee. And otherwise, if, for example, they put the wrong street address, then that can be repaired after the fact. Does anyone have any other questions on not only onboarding, but any of the guest or employee injuries that we've covered today? Remember to take yourself off mute if you'd like to ask a question, or go ahead and type it in your chat screen. Okay, so just to wrap up, we will be sharing all of these documents with you. So payroll forms, injury reports, the slideshow, but it's important that you immediately start using and following these processes, okay? We expect that we're not gonna have any more onboarding issues with employees. They need to be onboarded before they work. So we're expecting not to have any other payroll issues regards to employees not being in the system, okay? And also, we also expect that we shouldn't be getting injury reports or incident reports 4 days later or a week later, okay? You need to follow the time frame for all of these processes, as well as the protocol within each one. So if you're unsure about anything, please reach out to your ASL or one of us so we can answer any questions you have.
I also wanted to add for the safety portion of the guest incidents and injury. So there are definitely days and at night when you are not in the store. So that process needs to be communicated to all of your afternoon leaders or shift leaders that are covering on your days off. If you don't have a PM shift leader, then at least your PM crew members need to know the proper process for filling out the incident form and giving you a call if they have questions when we do have any kind of employee or guest incidents happening. All right, well, thank you everyone for your time. If you have questions, like we said, reach out. Otherwise, hopefully this process will be crystal clear and we can focus on driving less of our other metrics. Have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.